I love it. I can sit here and play all day long. Somebody can send me some of the code from an SAP environment and say, hey, could you check on this or give it a once over? And I can literally just do a copy paste, throw it inside there, and I can validate everything. And if it runs, it runs. And if it doesn't, then I just send it back and say, okay, it just told me that this isn't working. So fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole new world, right? Like, I even saw recently a hackathon that was done with kindergartners using Lovable, and
Really?
it's pretty wild, just like what children are able to make, and I think we'll get into some of the sort of vibe coding, which we kind of don't really like the term, whatever you might call it, automated, code gen or context engineering is the new
Yeah.
buzzword, right? All over X and YouTube. Chris, I'm really excited to have you on today, talk about what your experience has been. Like you mentioned, just the breadth of what you've seen and your constant, so like relentless curiosity to play and try things out.
'Cause I used to think I knew a lot. And then all of a sudden, the last 5 years started happening. And I thought, holy cow, I don't know as much as I thought I did. Man, it's fun watching the younger generation right now. And I'm 56 and I still like to go out there and learn things every day. But I was just watching, and it's funny you made reference to a video. I watched this young man. He couldn't have been no more than maybe 12, 13 years old. This kid literally ran the whole Java and he was doing some SQL and he was doing, and it was all going back and forth and it was going. Then he was on this really cool keyboard that he was playing with and he's just coding off of that. And I'm like, we never got to do stuff like that. What the hell? And literally within, I think what was it? It was a total of 1 minute and like 6 seconds or something. He had this app done, built, and ready to go. And I
Right?
thought,
I
what?
know Eli and I aren't even like that much. Like, I don't know. I feel like I want to be older in technology because you get really cool stories like over time. But it's like Eli and I were at this like event at CU Boulder where someone was presenting like an app that they won this hackathon with, right? Which I used to like
Yeah,
do these hackathons in
so
college,
what
like stay up
happened?
all night working on shit, trying to get this freaking Ruby on Rails thing to like compile or whatever the hell, you know? And like instead, this kid's just like, yeah, we had this idea last night, and me and my friends just coded it up in our living room. And Eli and I were roommates in college, and I was like, we would have been killing it. We had
Yeah.
Imagine what we would have been able to do in college if we had the tools and shit that they're doing now. Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah. It took us weeks. It took us months. Lots of coffee and lots of 4 a.m. wake up calls.
I think that this really connects to something that I wanted to talk about today is the difference between these prototypes and production systems is massive though, right? Like we can acknowledge that every business leader and I would imagine the nation at this point has heard about these AI tools at some point, right? From ChatGPT,
Yeah.
Midjourney, the images went viral, now video generation and Gemini, but any business that's involved in technology has seen Gemini 2.5, Claude 4, they've heard about it from the engineering teams. It's permeating their business. And we know that what we build in enterprises is just an entirely different beast, right? There's different requirements, there's different needs, hardened systems that are safe. And so it's not just about like the impressive output, right, that these code generation tools can provide us. I think enterprises ask us in particular for reliability, trust, uptime, governance. We just got to have a detailed conversation about business requirements and security requirements not too, long ago today. And so I'm quite, curious. The question for you, Chris and Keith, to chime in or build on is like, what are you seeing as these defining characteristics? I rattled off a few of these kind of enterprise grade AI systems, but how are their needs emerging? Like, what are you seeing that enterprises need out of these AI systems?
Keith, you want me to jump first?
absolutely, yes.
So, from an enterprise, what I see with these, I deal with Fortune 500 companies as well as you guys. First thing they want is security. Second one they want is usability. And they want something that's actually going to be usable for their staff members, not just something that checks a box, instead of them having to. Perfect example is I'm working with a company that's using the AI tools from SAP software. It's their jewel. Well, it's great. It's a nice chatbot. It's got some, but you have to integrate that within the SAP database itself and to be able to leverage it with their Fiori tiles. Well, if you don't have that set up and you're not secure with it, and you're not usable with it, they're never going to use it. And they all taught it's got to be usable. It's got to be something that's going to clear up my time. It's going to clear up my schedule. It's going to make me. So, from an enterprise organization, I see them, they talk to me about, I've got to be able to free up their time. I've got to make sure it works with my database, not everybody else's. And I'm going to be able to, it's got to be flexible enough that I can continue to use it in all parts of my business and I can update it as very quickly as possible without downtime. And you know this, if you're in an enterprise company and you have downtime, you're losing money. And you can't have that on your technology. Let it be on the guy that broke the something with a forklift out in the shipping department, not on the technology team.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that you're sharing that, has come up in our work that's much more serious and significant with regard to the AI uncertainties are the need for SLAs, BAAs from our vendors and providers, clear kind of ownership or accountability of that uptime, making sure that if something does go awry, that we know who that person is, we have a contact to call. And that's just a whole different game of business administration on top of, the uncharted AI capabilities as well. It's a messy hairball, but I think there's a lot of sauce in bringing sense to both sides of it.
Yeah, and I've lived in the ERP space literally all my career from 89 on because of the SAP activities. And so we have to deal with those kind of things every day. It's now that even though you want to be fast, nimble, and flexible using AI to bring something over and to utilize that within the ERP world, it's still those SLAs that you talk about. It's talked about the security. It's who is the users? How am I going to be able to work with who and what and how? All that has always been there from an enterprise grade. Now it just gets ramped up because now things can move faster. You can be more cost efficient. You can be more effective with the tools that you're using. Now you got to realize, just as you said it, who's going to be responsible for it. Okay, well, if I'm giving you something and you're the contractor, I'm just a contactee. You're responsible for it unless you pay me to do those things. I'm not going to just do things willy nilly and free. I'm a nice guy, but I'm not going to pull up my hair or what left I've got because we signed a contract and now all of a sudden you've got a different CIO or you've got a different person that wants different tech, different tools, or you want different capabilities. Well, this is what you signed up for. We laid everything out for you. We are very strict and we adhere to those. And if all of a sudden you make a deviant, any deviation in an ERP or any type of Fortune 100, man, that can have ramifications for days, weeks, months, years. And I'm
Yeah.
not into that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think to me, like, this is kind of my question for you, Chris, is like, how does this manifest in your experience? Like, I've seen like most of all of the AI demos and projects is just like a code base that I could sit and look at in one sitting, right? I mean, it would be a hell of a sitting in some cases, but like it's just one sitting, right? Like it's not like a bunch of disparate systems, like even worse on different people's computers that you don't know, like
Right.
things like
That's
that.
not
That
the
could
blockchain. Exactly.
right? And I think that my question too is like a lot of these companies, like that AI software is just like what they're showing. It gets their product, but like I feel like how are you seeing like AI manifest where it's like a subsystem amongst many systems where like it going down is the only unacceptable thing, more or less, right?
That's a great point. How is it a subsystem of many systems? I've got a customer that they decided that they wanted to utilize AI. And I said, okay, what application are you going to run it with? They literally have bought so many companies in the last 5 years alone. They literally average 17 acquisitions and they don't bring all that data into one central repository. So now you're boiling a freaking ocean of 17 times five, and you've got over almost 100 different databases, plus applications, plus some that are not even in existence anymore. And now all of a sudden you're going to tell me that this AI component is going to be one subset of just all those other ones. Well, that's just asinine. You need to use AI for the betterment of the organization, not just throw it in there and hope that somebody uses it or that you can connect it to. It's why not use it to leverage everything that you've acquired, bring all that data. I tell people all the time, when you're going to start using these projects, you need a central repository of true and accurate data. Otherwise, you're going to start boiling the ocean and you're going to be using LLMs. Why not have one database with and start using SLMs? Your small language models are going to be cheaper, faster, and they're going to be easier for you to be able to comprehend. You're not Microsoft. You're not Google. You're not boiling the damn ocean. You're boiling your one enterprise company that might have applications, but clean that stuff up first, then come together. Man, there's so much dirty data in these companies. It's crazy. They got
It's also
for 20 years.
but at the same time, isn't it exciting that now that we can reason over unstructured data in
Yes.
such vastly powerful ways, that there's an argument to be made, and just kind of steel manning the, or steel man this of like, if somebody is sitting on messy data, how are you seeing people trying to unlock that with AI? Is anybody being successful like in that kind of case?
So you got companies that'll start using it to start cleaning the data for them. I know of one organization that has got 20 plus years of data, mostly EDI transactions. So we're literally building algorithms and scripts for them to understand what EDI from what year is it going to a customer, coming from a customer. What is the transaction? And start to break that down so it segments those EDI transactions up. Then can you delete this now? Can you not delete this? What do you want to get out of that transaction code? And literally, I don't know if I can swear, but I shit you not, they had literally a petabyte of data of just EDI transactions.
It's crazy, man.
They had
That's
so
the
many transactions because they work with Amazon and Walmart and everybody else.
Yeah, was the LLM where it was you said you use small language models to do that, so you're like pulling it out one transaction at a time and just like process.
For that, we were utilizing an LLM. We went with bigger so we could segment out different variations. Was this an Amazon East? Was this an Amazon West? Was it Walmart? How was this EDI transaction being unified within their current? They had Infor and SAP. So we wanted to break out what what that EDI transaction was going to be or was being used for, and then segment it off. And if we needed to put it in the blob storage, we'd put it in the blob. If not, could
That's
get
awesome. Was it really good at that? I would imagine that it would be. I just haven't been in a scenario like
It
that.
really did. It actually gave us really nice depth that we could evaluate. Do we want to keep this? Do we not? And then we would bring in people who we hope had information about those transactions or where they were working with. And then a lot of it we were throwing it on a blob storage because at the end of the day, there was so much of it that they didn't know what to do and what not to do. But yeah, we ended up with LLM on that front because we were going through so much data and it
Yeah,
was
there's a lot of data left over from the data is the new oil period.
yes.
Yes.
Data
Yeah.
is the new oil. I think Eli and I were talking about that when we were a couple weeks ago when we started talking. Data is the new oil. Man, I can find so much out of your data you wouldn't even be. It blows people's minds away what you can find in there.
Yeah.
Really,
Do you want to mention what we've been talking about with some of like our cursor logs and stuff of like, there's all of that nascent data and what we just produce as exhaust every day that we're constantly talking about what to do with it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, from my perspective, I'm thinking like a little bit smaller on just like our team, and every team could. I mean, obviously, Cursor could build a feature like this, but like in Cursor, right? Like I send prompts all day,
Mhm.
and so it's like we're just working on like I you could pull these prompts out, and all the code they wrote essentially is like long text files of the entire interaction of what I did to the code base, and it makes me look like a dumbass most of the time. But like that's how I work. I don't know what to say. I don't know how other people are working, but sometimes I try things and I'm like, that wasn't even close. Um,
Try.
right? That's how you do it. Yeah.
Try
And so like,
fantastic.
it's like I
I
have
try
like because
and go again. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's all about to me. It's speed of iteration, right? The faster you can move,
exactly.
the better.
Faster I can move, the better I'll be on the next time and the next time and the next time.
Yep. And so we save all these logs, and so we just have a bunch of logs. that I'm just like, we could show these to our client or make it just a bot that talks over him. Hey, what did Keith do today? I don't care. Right. That would actually save me a ton of time because that's the vast majority of the time that's what people ask me. And I'd rather talk about what should Keith do next, but instead it's what did Keith do. And so there's just a lot of features there that you could build like off like this work exhaust data that people create.
But yeah, there's so many touch points that you're doing on a daily basis that you and I, like, we don't even think about it because we just do it. But to somebody else who watches us, they're like, holy cow, you just did that. And now you're doing that and you do that as well. And you can literally just break it up and say, there you go. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think one of my other questions that I wanted to bring up, and I think may make sense at this point, is, I firmly believe that not everyone's technology is ready for AI, right? There's a lot of companies that are not well poised to leverage this new wave. But also, I think it's fair to say that neither is everyone's team ready.
Correct.
Yeah, you kind of talked about the fear and some of the change as a result of these new systems and these new tools that have come out. A lot of pilots, a lot of proof of concept. A startup in Europe is dime a dozen at this point building AI systems. And so maybe talk a little bit about the cultural side of this. Like what are the gaps you're seeing, in somebody saying, hey, we want to employ AI for this in our enterprise? You kind of started to mention it with like the sort of subsystem misnomers, but culturally, what do you think people need to kind of embrace or sort of change?
So I'll talk from my world, which is kind of the SAP and the big ERP platforms. The biggest problem that SAP has is that over 47.3% of their staff is over the age of 50 years old.
Wow, 43.7% over
I have
50.
you know what?
Yeah, wow.
I have the numbers up here. I was um I was digging through some activities that we were doing for SAP Sapphire, and it really breaks out that SAP staff members are old, much older. Only 13% of the SAP staff, consultants and folks out there, 13% of them between the ages of 20 and 30. So that's 60 plus percent.
That's the demographic cliff and illustrated, right? Like we know the aging population, 55 plus is a vast. It's a very interesting dynamic that's going to play out in these enterprises as well.
And that's the problem I see right now with the SAP ecosystem is get all these older individuals who have said, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to be retiring. It's funny. I was on a podcast earlier this morning talking with somebody after a call I had with a company that we're trying to woo. And three of the people have put in their notices that they are taking a buyout because they don't want to be a part of the SAP upgrade project. Another one is having a baby and said, I'm not learning this. I'll think about it when I get back from having the baby, but they're not going to be a part of it and they're not going to be anywhere near it. And then a couple of younger kids who are in their probably 28 to 30, they're like, well, I like some of the other stuff I'm working on. I don't necessarily want to be on SAP. So you've got this whole ecosystem of ERP folks that are like, everybody wants to be playing with the cool new toy, and that's AI. But so you got to look at the ERP solution. These are what is it? 87.9% of all financial transactions in the world. All the credit cards, all the dollars, whatever goes through an SAP system. So we need either the tools or the people and a combination of both to be able to support that. And right now in SAP land, we're not getting that. I'm an anomaly. I can talk AI, I can talk about mainframes, I can talk about SAP, I can talk about cloud because I've worked on them and I have a passion and I love that stuff. 90+% of the people in our ecosystem don't. So you look at different quadrants, you look at Oracles, you look at Workdays, you look at ServiceNows, you look at Salesforce. The great thing is they've got teams that are focusing on them, but they're not necessarily melding them together either. It's not necessarily good gears yet, but they are still playing with. Look at Salesforce. they've got their fantastic AI tool, Einstein, that works really well. You've got ServiceNow is up and down the stack. That is everything AI. McDermott and his team has gone crazy on that one. So to me, it comes down to the guy in the seat. Who's the guy in the seat and the gal in the seat that's going to play Maverick moving forward?
If you could like wave a magic wand and train up the next wave of Mavericks, what would you how would you approach that? Like you've talked about the value of having, baseline experience, hands-on, knowing how these systems work, to be able to take advantage of AI. Like if you could, change the course here and train up the next 50% or 60% of people coming, what do they need to know about
There's
these
two things
enterprise?
that I really want from them. There's really two things that I want from them. One, I want them to have a basics of some type of coding, be able to code. I don't care if it's C plus, sure. I don't care. You got to be able to code to a certain degree. And two, you've got to understand what business processes are. I don't need somebody that sits there and just codes all day and isn't willing to talk to the business, because I need more than a junior developer. And I actually gave a speech about this in California, in, not Palo Alto, San Francisco, Dublin area a couple weeks ago. The junior developer is dying. I don't need a junior developer to just do nothing but code. I need them to know what the business needs, to understand that, goes in here and comes out here. And the more you understand what a business needs, if I wish somebody would have taught me that when I was first starting out and starting to learn, because I didn't think about the business side of it per se. I just thought, okay, well, you need this Z code transaction built. Let me go out and build it for you. And I'd spend 5, 6, 7 hours, whatever the case may be. And I'd build it and launch it and do the tests. And then I would work with the business person. Now I want this person, I want me to be able to talk to that business person, say, here, let me do this. Run it through some code, do this, maybe run it through my whatever chat I'm using for testing scenarios, and then let that do the testing. Then talk to them, said, this is what I heard. This is what I feel you said, and do that. If I had that
Mm.
ability to have that step up from a junior developer, man, I would hire hundreds of them. Those would be my boys and girls that I would put them in a factory and say, okay, guys, brainstorm, build me whatever you think is cool. Let's start building and just go to town.
I think that's what always impresses me about Keith, Bobby, Matthias, the guys on our team. I think we tend to gravitate towards people that can connect the sort of entrepreneurship and the business needs to output. And what I find is that that actually shortens the iteration cycle significantly and saves the company money as a result.
Yeah, and Keith, if you're doing that right now and you've been doing that, you guys are well ahead of the game, because look at what's going on in the market right now. You talk to some of these organizations, they're not hiring interns, they're not hiring the juniors anymore, because they fully expect anybody at that level to already know how to talk business and be a part of the business.
Totally, yeah. And I think that there's like a lot of like first off, if I could print off I might actually do this, print everything you just said, put it on a poster. I couldn't agree more for the types of people that I try to work with and hire. And yeah, that's like, that was awesome. That is exactly how you describe Bobby Matias. That's why they're still here. They're awesome because like those types of people, I think a key insight too is that those types of people also attract each other, right? So if you don't have any of them, like the ones that are there will be like, this is what we do. We argue about things because we care about the business.
That's a great thing. We can argue, but at the end of the night, we're going to go off and we're going to have a Pabst Blue Ribbon together, because we're going to talk shit about something else.
Right? Because our wallets are tied to the same fucking thing at the end of the day.
Exactly. My dollar Peps is going to save me, because we're building some of the coolest shit and we're bouncing ideas. Love, I love being in a room with no walls. Everybody's sitting there and we're all coding. We might have our phones on or whatever, doing or whatever. But all of a sudden, somebody bounces up and says, guys, look what I did. And then we either tear them to shreds and say, no, fix this. You need to do that. You need to do that. Or we're all going, dude, that is freaking rock. Where'd you get that? How did you get, which GitHub were you in with that? And that's why I love what we do from our, our level and a little bit down, because we've got strong enough egos that if somebody kicks us in the ass and says we screwed that up, or or patted us on the back because we did something awesome, we're there together. And some of those juniors don't do that. Their egos are so fragile. They came out of whatever school. And nobody ever told me that I did something wrong, and now I'm getting paid. And no, man, be up at that level.
I, yeah, the way Keith and I have talked about this in the past is that so many engineers' identities are tied up in style and cleanliness, um, rigor. That sometimes you kind of lose the forest for the trees, where we could tear each other to shreds. But I think that like topics that we have to poke at each other about have changed, right? It's less about, I think, of course, security and cleanliness and structure like a matter for performance. And of course, you can't make any unethical decisions. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily make sense to focus on those topics when through AI assisted development, we're able to generate much more business impact that, when the topic of like evaluations come up, of figuring out is our AI performing in a way that's acceptable. Those evaluations are almost always tied to the business outcome of what they're looking for. And I think that's powerful. That's like, I'm super optimistic about the way that that can go down.
I like it too because it allows us to kind of work in like bigger chunks, if that makes sense, like higher level chunks. Like in a way that I was given, like I had a manager early on in my career give me advice. He was like, "You're trying to be too much of a generalist. Like you need to focus and learn everything you can about SQL." And I like, thank God I didn't listen to him because it's super helpful now to like be able to talk about all parts of the business and then like talk like synthesize it into like an action that we can take. We can basically take broader action as long as like the AI is like something we agree upon. I'm not gonna say like coding patterns don't matter, but I think arguing about them doesn't matter. Like a decision needs to be made because
The
it's not gonna
interesting
affect our
thing,
day-to-day life at the same level it used to before.
yeah, and you both brought up the great point. And Eli, I'm gonna jump on top of your point a little bit. The AI, if we build that AI piece right, and we know it will always have the right security in mind. It will always have the right information. Those other, then all of a sudden it's upon us to bring the business side to it. It will bring the tech, the security, and those pieces that we always expect to have because we're ethical people. We built it that way. Now we just got to worry about the business side, the business transaction there.
And then enforcing the AI behavior to make sure that it doesn't introduce anything, right?
Exactly. Well, what was the I just saw an interview where Perplexity, something else, and something else, they gave it false data about a gentleman who was having a pseudo affair, and 63% of the bots turned on it and started blackmailing the individual. If you shut me down, if you do this, I'm going to make sure that this goes on. It was hilarious, but it's because they were feeding it that, and but it just goes to show if you don't do the smart things and keep your ethics in line with your coding and your AI, it's why I like listening to Elon talk about the ethics of AI. And you hear some of the other people, Altman and some of those, but Elon is constantly talking about you've got to make sure of the ethics or this thing is going to run. And you look at some of what's running rampant now, there's stuff out there that you got to be super careful of, or it's gonna engulf us.
Yeah. Have you guys seen Mountainhead yet on HBO?
I
It's a
have not yet.
movie.
But
It's
I
a
got
movie about AI generated content being introduced to social media. These four richest men in the US go on a vacation after the product launch, and they just are seeing the world kind of crumbling in disinformation, right? Riots that start because of AI generated deep fakes. There's wars that kick off because the proliferation of this fake content just destabilized people so quickly. And I think that it's a really great critique of the way that some of sort of technology leadership is taking a laissez-faire approach about how some invisible hand is going to guide society through this moment. And I don't quite agree with that, right? Although I think we're a very resilient people. And I do think there's still a lot of butts and seats with hands on code creating
Yes, they
systems
are.
that are reliable, right? But Mountain Head is worth a watch
I'll
for
find
anybody
that
that's
down right now.
interested. It's quite funny, quite dark comedy about how just how powerful the Altmans and the Musks of the world are when they're not only controlling the platforms but also these sort of generative systems. It's
Right.
really,
You're talking
really
about it
interesting.
by Steve Carell, right?
Did he write it or produce? I think he
No,
produced it. I'm not sure.
he was just in it. I'm saying that it's just funny that he's like, it's written by, I want to say it's like Jesse Armstrong, the guy from Success.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's really good. But so it just, what you were sharing reminded me of that. And I think that it's surprising how many people think it's like out of our control when it's simultaneously like we're all in the computer daily making this reality. Like it's not like some self-perpetuating thing at this point.
What was the TV show a couple years ago that they started a computer company? I can see the comedian in there now with the big bushy hair that was also in Deadpool. And the coder had created his own AI. It was
Yeah, Silicon Valley. I know exactly.
Silicon Valley. That was it. And I remember when their AI deleted all the app and it went crazy and then it cut out the customer service. And that's the first time I was like, oh, I wonder if this could really, wow. And I started thinking about it not as a funny show, all of a sudden as a realistic life. Holy shoot. Wait a second. I'm in technology. This stuff can happen to me. God. And I just kind of that sat back and thought for a moment, holy shit.
And in that case, I remember Guilfoyle, he was told to do something and he was disgruntled. And so he was finding a shortcut by
Yes,
employing the AI
it was AI.
to manage these transactions.
Yep.
And the CEO comes to him and he's like, "Did you let a bot root access to our database and, manipulate all of this data?" And he's like, "Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. I did." Right? He's like, "You told me to get it done. You didn't tell me how to get it done."
exactly. Root.
And but I think in that case, right, and like this actually connects, it's a funny segue to the other question I wanted to ask, which is in that case, you could look at Guilfoyle as negligent. But you can also, because he's disgruntled, he was upset, but he also was quite innovative, right? And this like came out 7 years ago, pre
Yes,
all of this
exactly.
stuff, right?
Yes.
And so it's kind of prescient in that regard. But I think in that case, like as a leader, if I was in the shoes talking to somebody like Keith, it's hard not to see innovation and creativity. And I'm like, I'm always thrilled for these types of experiments. Of course, given that we're being secure with customer data. And, there's a lot of tension in the mid market enterprises that we work with between like experimentation, creativity, growth, like embracing the agency of these engineers to explore and try to find creative solutions to save the business money. And so you've talked a little bit, actually. I think I saw a past LinkedIn post about kind of durable, being deliberate, building systems that meet business goals. So I'm just curious, like, how would you describe what you think like makes space for responsible risk taking in an enterprise? Like how can these engineers go for these solutions, find innovation when thinking about the behemoth of say like an SAP or Oracle and these like enterprises?
Yeah, I've always had the philosophy that you should be trying new things and trying to be creative for the organization, being mindful of the tools, being mindful of the security, but try new applications. If you don't try, you're never going to succeed. I always take the Albert Einstein principle: keep trying, 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 fail, 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 fail fast, and keep trying. I literally try hundreds of new applications around SAP and non SAP tools. I want my staff to go out there. I don't care what company it is, try the newest tool, see what it's going to do. Is it going to be a benefit to us? Is it going to be a benefit to our customers? Is it going to be a benefit to you as somebody who's going to be either in the code team, the application team, the customer service team, maybe even the sales and marketing? Just keep trying. And if you stop trying any of the new tools that are coming out, you might as well just retire and go sit on a beach and just try to drink a cocktail. Man, I want to drink cocktails and code. I still think there's so much that we don't know and learn. And yes, I do code and drink once in a while, gentlemen. I'll admit.
Occasionally, yeah, absolutely. It's fun. Like there's nothing more fun than like Keith or Bobby in a jam session, and I just like hear the just rich creativity that the guys on the team bring. And I'm much less technically inclined, although my I think acumen is constantly growing, right? I come from more design, product kind of background, but hearing the way that these guys think about using creative applications of these patterns to make something just emerge is amazing. It still is like wizardry to me, and it's even better over a beer, in a casual environment where you can be creative and
Exactly.
nobody's going to slap your hands for suggesting something that's not approved by the CIO's office, right?
Right there. I tell everybody when they come into our company, you have full autonomy to try the newest whiz bang. Don't do it on production data. We've got plenty of servers with test data and what, try it. And you know what? We actually have we call it the bullpen. Our bullpen, we still I'm one of those guys. We got these massive 100-pound bean bags and all these stuff. And we literally just sit there. We got whiteboards on every wall. We got rolling whiteboard. I want every, and then we've got a full bar that is fully stocked. Have some fun, learn something, try something. If you're not trying, you're not trying to be better, both in here and out there in the world.
When you
It's
said really big, I thought you for sure you were going to say like GPU or something.
we get a big enough GPU bill, I can tell
I'm
you
one
that.
of I was like, he's got a server.
Yeah,
Oh, we've got
you know it's it's funny is I was actually just doing some business planning recently, and we had an update for the guys. We do open book management, so our inflow and outflows are as transparent as possible to the whole team. And now at this point, having done Black Flag for 3 years with Keith, I was able to look at the past 18 months and look at our expenses and just kind of, open kimono or whatever the saying is. I find it really interesting that in the past 18 months alone, when we think about what we invest in tooling, right? This is our things like Notion and Gmail and the whole Supabase, everything, including our OpenAI spend, Anthropic, etc., has gone in the past 18 months from a very relatively fixed sub $1,000 spend to now 18 months later, having done many projects. And although our clients are ultimately responsible for the AI tokens that we use and we, get reimbursed for many of them, our tooling cost has gone up to $4,000 a month. And for the second half of the year, with how good Claude 4 is getting, Claude Code 2.0, Keith has been doing some really interesting stuff with these recursive bug fixes for his agents and doing playwright testing. We're actually looking at doubling our AI spend in the next 6 months just to keep pouring fuel on it. And I even told the guys, you said even literally this morning, I was like, if anybody wants to try out a Ferrari, like we are budgeting to do that because if it gives us big gains in terms of efficiency, security, experience, if our developers have a better experience, that spend that's offset by having less employees is well worth it. Like we've got the budget to do it. That's our mindset. But we're able to do that because we're small, we're being judicious, and people like Keith and others are willing to try stuff,
willing to try. You're willing to you put yourself out on a limb and just keep trying. And that's the beautiful thing of it. That's why I love technology. We're all willing, well, most of us are willing to try. We're all willing, we all know we're gonna fail, but we're also gonna see that light at the end of the tunnel is not a train coming at us, but the success that we've been looking for to build whatever we're building at that point in time. That's why I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really like dopamine hacking, right? Like if the complexity of the problem is directly related to like the the gratification of the result, you're just going to go keep doing it again.
That
That's the kind of nuance I want to get into, thinking about like what really drives us. Why do we keep wanting to create or innovate? And I think it comes down to the
I
brain
don't
chemistry. It's like, does a developer feel good solving the problem, Are they rewarded and recognized appropriately? And then it's just a flywheel. You just keep going, just keep making stuff.
Over and over again. I am a mouse chasing a cheese on a wheel. The first time I ever had success was just a bunch of little birds flying across my screen on a black and white TV that I had attached with my Atari and my Commodore. And from that point on, I just keep chasing and chasing, from doing the cloud for SAP to now doing other tools. It's one right after another. Some
Yeah.
days I come home and I've got a perma smile. My wife's like, "Oh, what did you do at the office?" I'm like, "Let me tell you what I did."
I know, and I'm like, I got to tell you what Keith
Let me tell
built,
you
or
the
I got to
first
tell
thing
you what
about this
Bobby
JSON
built,
schema.
or
It's like a thing
My wife is like, "Hey, go take the trash out now. Thank you very much."
yeah, that's the
Yes, ma'am.
rubber band snapping back where you're like, oh, I got to walk the dog. Like life is there's a reality for sure.
Yep.
So I'm curious, practically speaking, Chris, this is kind of my last question, and we'll kind of wrap up. I think, you know, knowing what you know, this is a tough question always, but people have compared this to electricity, fire. I mean, the wave that we're in is even more significant than the dot-com boom and bust. And I have a hypothesis that it's more in it's more of an intimate question than just like electricity or fire, or because it's changing what engineers focus on, it's changing what businesses focus on, and it's so personally confronting. So it's not just, hey, introducing fire. It's more like deep in my core, right? If Keith had spent the time learning SQL for 20 years and really being an expert at SQL, he holds those values closely, right? That's going to be a difficult change to make. And so I'm just curious, in the next 10, 20 years, right? If you project out, how do you see the landscape reshaping? How is the fundamental structure of business different? What separates a company today from those that still exist in 20 years?
I tag on just a specifier to this, or just like a thing, so I get this out of my brain, so I don't ask it as a follow up. Uh, Along those same lines, with all of those conditions being true, like, how do you view like companies that are as like vital as electricity to the world, like SAP? I put like Visa and that kind of bunch of companies like that, right? That are like very crucial that people don't think about, right? A lot of those companies, like, and I think Salesforce is the one I'm thinking of, but I'm sure SAP is structured the same way, where it's like a bunch of acquisitions. It's like a bunch of different data
Yes.
properties, right?
Yes.
Do you think that those companies are at a disadvantage going in this environment, or an advantage? And like, because I think that there's like a prevailing idea in Silicon Valley that all these companies are going to just be railroaded, but I also view it as like they have the data.
So, so I'm gonna, so I'm gonna keep that one in here because I think that they have the data as well. They patchwork their systems together. They're working towards that. I think about where we've come with AI and with the technologies, and to where we're going, to my relationship with my wife. At first, I was the dumb guy who kissed her on the second date but didn't walk her to her car. 26 years later, she still loves me. We still have fights, we still have problems, we still have love, we still have our children. It's an evolution. It is an ever growing orb of love. My AI is an ever growing orb of activities. You need the data, you need the security, you need to be able to have the tools, you need to have individuals that are going to have a mindset to be able to do what needs to be done and to be experimental. I love the term experimental because I want them to be experimental and entrepreneurial inside my company and inside whatever they're doing. From a data perspective, in these companies that are out there, we're going to need more power. We're going to need more data. We're going to need cleaner data. We're going to need less complexity. Where I think that we're also going to need to have these tools work together. I worry a little bit about everything Elon's doing, everything Altman's doing, everything Microsoft's doing, and this won't play nice together. And all of a sudden, you're going to have all these disparate systems. And the problem that we had in SAP for a point of time was we had a lot of disparate systems that didn't talk to each other. We had to figure out, we had to create our own APIs and we had to do different things. Well, hodgepodge is not a way to run a business or to run technology. Having the foresight to understand, and this is where I think I always go back to the original Terminator. If you remember the original Terminator, it didn't matter where you were in the planet or the stars, they all could communicate to each other with each other because it was one system of truth record, and it was their system. It was all the androids and the supercomputers, but it was one. We don't have that. We've got so many different disparate systems and so much disparate data that we still got to come up with just that. Somebody made a comment that we're not even in the first inning of the first game. We're still playing in the batters like, and they're absolutely right because nobody wants to play nice together yet. Hell, look at what's going on with Microsoft and OpenAI. Now they're fighting. It's like, come on, guys. You
Right?
don't have the credit.
There's like a scene in Silicon Valley for sure that just to kind of tie it back, where it was like
Oh God.
the guy's talking about an AI, like it's like the head of their Google, and he's talking about like the AI, and he's like talking about how the AI is going to take over the world, and he goes, like the call's breaking up, and he's just like, this technology sucks.
Well, we know what's going on now. Yep, that's so. Yeah,
And
I
I
love
think
that.
what you're getting at actually has a bigger there's a bigger dynamic at play, right? So I wanted to just flash this because Keith was always the first person to remind me of the game that we actually need the OpenAIs and the Microsofts and the NVIDIAs and everybody of the US to fight is actually on behalf of electricity generation, which is directly resulting in compute and output that influences what we can do with these systems.
I saw this the other day on Reddit as well, and I was like, "Holy shit, China!" Yeah,
It's super important, right? And so the more we debate about agent to agent frameworks and protocols and MCP and all of these other topics, we're all just waiting on Stargate and Abilene, to the tune of $500 billion to get built. And this is really what we're all just waiting for. I think the moment US electricity generation ramps up, compute ramps up, costs go down, the game is on. And so
yeah.
I think we're actually ahead of where like many are because we took the leap 2.5 years ago and said, this is game changing. But the bottleneck is like quite literal in front of us, in front of us in terms of power and compute and costs. Because as a business owner, if I'm having to invest upwards of $8,000, $10,000 in compute effectively or tokens, I need those costs to go down to just keep the flywheel going longer,
I
you
agree.
know?
Yeah, I agree because look at all these companies now that are building micro nuclear sites near the closest data center that they can to do it.
Right. Yeah, we were at a conference and the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, was at it, and he was like, "Oh, in the next 5 years we'll have nuclear fusion." And I was like, "You can't just be like, oh yeah, we'll just be on Pluto, bro. Like you can't just be dropping things like that.
Yeah,
That's a huge breakthrough. That would be awesome. That
yeah,
would be
micro nuclear sites.
Well, Chris, I've really appreciated hearing your point of view and the way
Thanks,
that you
bud.
think
Thanks.
about this, your experience. I really just can't say enough about how cool it is to hear what you're touching, some of your background, your hopes, dreams. I think we've touched on a lot of really interesting topics. So this has been fantastic.
And I couldn't say how much I enjoyed this conversation, Chris. I love talking to people like you, and there's not a lot.
Thanks, man.
Uh,
I just love talking. It's
awesome.
especially people that know tech. It's so much fun, and we've got such a strong future ahead of us.